David Woods, senior NFL editor for The Score, knows that it's been a long time since we've had football on the field, and he joined me on Monday to help us satisfy our craving for some NFL news as training camp is set to commence at the end of the month. So first of all, David, we want to take the time to welcome you to the Two Man Advantage podcast. We're excited to talk some NFL football with you this afternoon as we preview this upcoming training camp season.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kevin. I'm excited to talk to you too.
So when we look at Derek Carr's contract, obviously he's the richest player to ever sign a contract until the next one comes up. So my question has to do with what did you think about that deal itself, and of course, do you think this is a sustainable trend? I know it's the way of doing business in the NFL, but if you look at the numbers, nearly a third of all quarterbacks around the league are getting up there, and as long as you're a franchise quarterback, you'll hit the $100 million threshold. So I'm wondering, do you think this is a sustainable model to adopt throughout the league?
I mean, the numbers look staggering when you see it, like 5 years, $125 million. It looks a little less staggering when you look at the contracts the NBA is giving out these days, like Steph Curry's new contract kind of blew Carr out of the water. But I mean, $125 million is nothing to sneeze at. I think it is probably sustainable just because the league's revenue is there, and more importantly, the salary cap increases have just made it not that difficult to pay franchise quarterbacks this kind of money. Like between 2009 and 2013, the cap basically stayed flat around 123 million, if I remember correctly. And in every year since then, it's gone up by at least $10 million. So with revenue rising, the cap rising, teams suddenly we no longer have the phenomenon of team pressed up against the cap. Like that's almost not even a reality for teams anymore. You get $10 million extra every year to spend. You can carry over any cap that you don't spend with some restrictions. It's not that hard for a team like the Raiders to commit $125 million to a player like Carr. And frankly, he's underpaid. Quarterback is probably the most important position in all of sports, and someone like that, the quarterback of a rising AFC team, maybe a Super Bowl contender, probably a Super Bowl contender, and one that's relocating soon, should have a bunch of new revenue. He's probably not getting enough money, and the NFL can certainly afford to pay their quarterbacks much more than that. So I do think it's sustainable, and I think we'll see incremental increases into above $100 million every time a new franchise quarterback signs. I think probably Carr won't be the highest paid player in league history for that long. If the Redskins come to their senses, I think they'll probably sign Kirk Cousins before the franchise tag deadline in July, and that deal may well top Carr's.
And when we look at Derek Carr, can you give me your thoughts on what he means to the Raiders, specifically because they are relocating, and I know that it was important to the Raiders to sort of give their franchise a face moving forward.
Well, I mean, I like Carr as a player. I think everybody's pretty excited about Derek Carr as a player, but I think he's got a way to go before he's an elite quarterback. I know the elite quarterback's kind of a goofy term to use, but if you wanted to define it as top 5, top 10, I'm not sure Carr's in that conversation quite yet. But this is the Oakland Raiders, soon to be Las Vegas Raiders we're talking about. They haven't exactly had an illustrious history of star quarterbacks. They certainly haven't had any recently. Derek Carr took that team to the playoffs. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see him in the playoffs, but he's probably going to take them back there this year. So what does a player like that mean to a franchise like that? I mean, that player means everything, and they should give him anything that he wants, and especially relocating. That team, it might be a tough sell in Las Vegas. We don't know exactly how that's going to work out. I think there'll be a honeymoon period when they move, and I'm sure people will show up for games, but they need to put a winner on the field in a city like that doesn't really have pro sports, and Derek Carr gives them the best chance to do that.
And when we look at the overall landscape of the league, who do you think gives the Patriots the best challenge to win the Super Bowl as we enter training camp?
Well, to me, it's the Steelers. I think that's the most balanced rival out there. I mean, we know the Steelers can score points. They can score with the Patriots if they get into a shootout. I mean, they disappointed in the playoffs, but we still haven't seen the Steelers with their big three on the field healthy together in the playoffs. I mean, we've had now 3 years of Le'Veon Bell either completely out of the game with injury or this past playoffs battling that groin injury that required surgery. So if we can ever get Ben, Brown, and Bell on the field healthy together, I think they can do some damage, and I think they can beat the Patriots. Especially, I like Martavis Bryant coming back this year. I think that adds a real weapon to that offense. I'm actually kind of high on the Steelers' defense, too. I know we don't talk about them. You know, they're not the steel curtain of years past, but I think that's a improving young defense. I like that front seven. I mean, Stephon Tuitt, they got Hargrave, Ryan Shazier. I think Bud Dupree can still be a player. I really like what they can do up front. The secondary, some issues there, but that has the potential to be a pretty good defensive unit and a pretty balanced team that I think, in the right circumstances, can beat the Patriots.
And when we look at training camp as a whole, what are 3 or 5 storylines you'll be keeping an eye on as we enter the training camp season?
Well, I mean, the quarterback battles, obviously, we don't have a great one this year, probably. We've had better quarterback battles in previous years, but I'm looking at Paxton Lynch, Trevor Siemian. I think that's a pretty interesting one right there. The reports out of Denver are that Lynch came on pretty strong at the end of minicamp, so I think they want him to start. I mean, they have much more invested in him, but that's a team that probably still thinks they're in a Super Bowl window. And if Lynch isn't ready, I think they have to play Siemian, and then I'm not sure that they're a Super Bowl team with Trevor Siemian, although if that defense can get back to where it was, they probably are. I'm looking at the Jets QB battle. I mean, it's hard to get excited about the Jets right now, but I am interested about Hackenberg. Reports are that he was sort of closing the gap on Josh McCown, whatever that means. I mean, that may not be much of a gap to close there, and they may not want him to close that gap, but I think we'll obviously get to see Hackenberg this season. It would be a complete disaster if we didn't. And I'm curious to see if the Jets have anything in him. I think they probably know they don't. And I think, to be honest, they probably are hoping they don't because they want to get that first overall pick. Other training camp battles, I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with the Saints running backs. The glowing reports out of New Orleans about how good Adrian Peterson likes his teammates fawning over him at OTAs and minicamp. It's a little hard for me to believe that someone at his age, with his injury history, is really looking that explosive. But apparently he looks amazing. I'm curious to see how he's going to fit in that offense. He can't really catch passes, but he's going to get to run behind a better offensive line. I think he says he's a better receiver than he's shown. We'll get to see it because Drew Brees throws to his backs, and I think it's possible Peterson is a missing piece for that team.
And what rookies are you most looking forward to watching, and which first-year head coach are you most interested to watch develop and how their season goes?
Rookies, my guy, Joe Mixon. I'm dying to see Joe Mixon on the field. Reportedly looks like a beast at minicamp and OTAs. I mean, I think Joe Mixon, we all know what he did off the field, and that's totally reprehensible. I think, as sad as it is to say, the way you make people forget about that is you perform on the field, and I think Joe Mixon is going to. He's a 2017 running back. He can catch. He's got tremendous patience, vision. I mean, everyone compares him to Le'Veon Bell, but you watch his film, man. You do see bits of it, and that is something that the Bengals could really use. I mean, who couldn't use that? And you combine him with John Ross, I think that's going to be a much more dynamic offense. But Mixon in particular is who I want to see. I don't think it's going to be difficult for him to get on the field. Giovanni Bernard still battling an injury, and Jeremy Hill he's been tremendously disappointed. I think Mixon starts from day one and he does big things. You want a first-year head coach to watch? How about Anthony Lynn? I think the Chargers are going to be pretty good. I'm very interested to see how that offense all comes together. They got some firepower for Phillip Rivers. Mike Williams, I'm not super high on, but I think he can be a red zone weapon as a rookie as long as he's healthy. You got Keenan Allen coming back. I'm pretty high on Hunter Henry. And that's just going to be an interesting team to watch. They're moving into that small stadium. So I'm very intrigued by what the Chargers are going to be this year.
And in terms of teams that are relocating, I just have one follow-up for you. Do you think, because most of the teams that are relocating have a rich history of where they were, so do you think that this will be a sustainable model for the NFL?
Relocation? No, absolutely not. I think it's been a very embarrassing couple of years for the NFL that for a long time had stability and we're pretty confident in all their franchises, and suddenly we have three teams move. And I mean, I know the Raiders haven't moved yet, but we know they're going to, and two in this offseason. I mean, it should be a source of embarrassment for the NFL, and they should be doing everything they can to make sure another team doesn't relocate and destabilize the whole league. I mean, I don't think there's any other team that's close to relocating, so I don't expect it to pop up again. But no, it's absolutely not sustainable to have your teams moving around like this.
And when we look at under the radar storylines as we head into training camp, what are some minor storylines that could develop into big ones as training camp develops?
Well, I'll give you a couple maybe. How about, can the Colts generate any pass rush? That's one that I'm looking at. That defense, I mean, it wasn't good last year. It's probably still not going to be good. They signed a bunch of linebackers. They signed so many linebackers. They added Marquise Mingo. They added John Simon. They added Jabal Shear. I feel like they added a couple more. They drafted Malik Hooker to sort of improve their secondary. But where's the pass rush going to come from? I have to imagine the defense will get better just because they've added even just a guy is better than what the Colts had at some of those positions. But they need somebody to step up and generate rush off the edge for them, or they're going to be in trouble again this year. So another underrated camp battle, maybe in Seattle, the running backs. I'm not so sure that Eddie Lacy, who they signed, is going to start for them. He's still not practicing. He's got that ankle stuff lingering, and his weight issues. Although apparently he's hitting those weight targets out there. But Thomas Small supposedly looks pretty good. I think he's fully recovered from his injury last year. And I'm a big CJ Prosise fan. I think Prosise sort of brings something to the table that those other guys don't. So I think it may be going a little under the radar that Lacy is not the guy there. The Seahawks say they want to run the ball. If Rawls looks good, I think he could have a big season. If Prosise takes that job, I think he could have a pretty big season. But they need someone to step up and take that job because they need to get back to a better rushing attack.
And we cover the Lions a lot here on this show, so I'm just wondering if you can give me a thumbnail on this, the Lions' prospects this season and how far away you think we are to signing Matthew Stafford to that long-term extension.
Well, I'll touch on Stafford first. I wrote about this yesterday for The Score. I think that Stafford extension is quite possibly coming this summer. I'm not sure that they need to rush it. He says he's not worried about it. He doesn't seem to want to rush it. But I just wonder if he's maybe waiting to see what happens with Cousins, and then he'll sign. But they got to get that done soon enough. I mean, Stafford's not going anywhere. He will eventually sign that extension. He'll probably be, at least briefly, the highest paid quarterback in NFL history or somewhere very close. But that's just the way it works for quarterbacks like him. As for the Lions prospects, I have some big question marks about that team. I mean, I think we all saw what happened last season, and there are real questions about whether that's sustainable, and I think it probably isn't. You can't win, 8 comeback games, whatever it was, and expect that to carry over to the next season. That's a team that just, it lacks talent in certain areas. I mean, and they're going to need a lot of things to go more right than they went last year to match last year's win total and get back to the playoffs. Like, they're going to need a running game. They're going to need something out of Amir Abdullah. He's what I see as a key piece there. I mean, they need Eric Ebron to finally develop into what they thought he was going to be when they drafted him. He's got to catch more than one touchdown this season because someone's got to catch the touchdowns that Anquan Bolden caught, and it's probably got to be Ebron. They desperately need to solve the issue at tackle. Taylor Decker's injury, and I mean, trading for Greg Robinson cannot be inspiring confidence in anyone. Maybe he doesn't even win that. Maybe Cyrus Kouandjio wins that job, who they signed. But either way, I mean, you're putting back a quarterback who, by the time the season rolls around, could be the highest paid player in the NFL, and you're putting Greg Robinson out to protect for him. That's worrisome.
And when we look at the landscape of the NFL and the Colin Kaepernick story, it hasn't really gone anywhere because he hasn't really signed. I had a cup of coffee of interest with the Seahawks, but that didn't materialize. So do you think the NFL is sort of shortchanging Colin Kaepernick, and are you surprised that he hasn't found a team yet?
Well, I think the NFL is absolutely shortchanging him. I think it's not hard to look around the league and see backup quarterbacks that he's clearly better than, third string quarterbacks that he's definitely better than. But am I surprised that he's not signed? Sadly, not really. I mean, that's kind of the way the NFL does business, and it's clearly not right. But the NFL's owners are, generally a pretty conservative bunch. You hear them, some of them talking about the feedback they got from fans about Kaepernick's protests. I think that's the amount of feedback they received is probably overblown. But these guys don't like those kind of headlines, and I think whether it's spoken or not, there's some tacit understanding that this guy can't play in the NFL because of what he did, and it's extremely unfair to Kaepernick.
And can you give me your thoughts on what's happening in D.C. with the Redskins? Obviously, they're still trying to work out the Kirk Cousins deal. That front office is in a bit of flux. I know that Doug Williams is now taking a role with them. Scott McLuhan, who was a big Kirk Cousins backer, is no longer there, and Bruce Allen is sort of running the roost there. But do you think they've mishandled this Cousins situation, and how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I do think they mishandled it. I think they should have locked him up prior to using the franchise tag twice on him, because it's put them in a situation where they can't realistically franchise tag him again next year. I think doing so would escalate his salary to somewhere in the range of $34 million, just, almost $10 million more than the highest paid player in the league. It's not tenable. So their option is either sign him long term, but that's difficult to do because now he has the leverage of saying, if you franchise me again, I'm going to get $34 million, so let's start my negotiations there. And that makes the negotiations pretty difficult. I suppose you could try to trade him, but I don't see how you're going to do that at this point of the offseason. I don't know what you could reasonably ask, and your potential trade partners, the list is a short one. I mean, maybe San Francisco, maybe, and I don't know where you look after that. And I suppose the third option is let him walk, but you can't let a franchise quarterback walk. And I don't know what more the Redskins need to see out of Kirk Cousins before they realize that this is a franchise quarterback. Again, we're talking like Derek Carr. He's maybe not a top 5 quarterback. Maybe he'll never be a top 5 quarterback. But you can't get franchise quarterbacks on trees like that. They're not. They're hard to find in the draft. They're hard to find with high draft picks. I mean, look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. They tried multiple times in the first round to find one and still don't. So the Redskins have what presumably is a franchise quarterback. Kirk Cousins has shown us nothing to think that he isn't that. So you have to commit the money to him, and that probably means doing it before the franchise tag deadline this month. It's in a couple weeks, July 15th, I think. So they got to make it happen, or they're entering into real uncharted waters where you're looking at a third tag or some sort of future negotiations that he can hold that third tag over your head. That wouldn't be any easier than you'll get now. So they got to make it happen.
We've got a couple of more for you. The first one has to do with John Lynch in San Francisco. Now, obviously, the 49ers brass understand that this is a complete rebuild, and they're obviously hoping for better results from when Matt Millen took over the Lions. So I'm wondering your thoughts on whether you think the John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan marriage in San Francisco can be an effective one.
Yeah, I do think it can be effective. One, probably not right out of the gate if you're defining effective as wins. I think that team probably won't win a lot of games, but I think they're building something. They seem to have some vision now. I think everybody liked those draft picks. They got some value with Foster. Solomon Thomas is a good player, obviously. I think Shanahan is a very good coach. I think there are always concerns when you get a young first-time head coach that it's going to be a little too much, or, he's going to come in a little, Josh McDaniels in Denver, too hot-headed, alienate some people. But I think Kyle Shanahan has he has enough experience, and he has his dad to bounce questions off him. I don't think he's going to go in too hot-headed and spoil the situation. So Kyle Shanahan has an offense that has proven to work. He doesn't have a lot of pieces to run it in San Francisco, but he's got an interesting running back in Carlos Hyde, another one they drafted, Joe Williams. He's got some pieces, familiar face in the receiving core in Pierre Garçon. And, not a quarterback yet, but that's obviously part of the plan, is let's start building a foundation. And the defense looks all right. They got a few pieces there. It'll be interesting to see how those linemen sort of fit into the new scheme. Armstead and Buckner, we've got to see how they fit in, but it may all come together. It may not quite come together this year, and they might be a 2-win team. But you know what? That's not so bad, because then they go out and get their quarterback and start, a push towards the playoffs beginning next season. They're probably still 3 or 4 years away, but I think the direction Lynch has them going in now is a much better one than they've been in several years now.
And what are your thoughts on Lynch as a first-time GM?
We don't know a lot about what Lynch is going to be as a GM, just because his hiring sort of came out of nowhere. He got that huge long contract, which was, mildly surprising, if not very surprising. But all we can grade him on is what he's done so far, and I thought most of his moves make sense. He gave a lot of money to a fullback. That was a little weird, but that's not going to wreck your salary cap. That's not going to change your roster in any meaningfully negative way. I thought he made a few other good signings, and I thought his draft picks were pretty good. So all that we can say so far is that it seems like he's got a plan. And, the 49ers are going to hope that he's their own John Elway. I don't know that he's going to quite be that, but maybe he will.
And my final question for you is, what has you most excited about this upcoming NFL season?
Well, there's a lot we're going to get to watch football. It's a long offseason in the NFL. It's a very long offseason in the NFL. So I'm just excited that it's back. But how about this? I think this is the year where Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota sort of take the step up. I think they'll both be in the playoffs. That's a prediction for you. And I think one or potentially even both are going to sort of begin their approach to the MVP conversation. I think those are two absolute superstars, the faces of the league over the next decade potentially. And I think the way that their teams have built around them, with what the Buccaneers did, adding Deshaun Jackson, drafting O.J. Howard, and what the Titans have done, adding Corey Davis in the draft, adding Eric Decker, I think they know that it's time for those two quarterbacks to become the megastars that they are going to be, and this is the year it begins happening, and I'm really excited to see that.
Hey, David, we know you just had a new baby and you're getting set for the upcoming season. So we want to thank you for your time and tell you that we enjoyed talking some football with you on the Two Man Advantage podcast this afternoon.
Oh, it was great talking to you. Thanks for having me.